Welcome, everybody. I'm Dr. Laurie Davis coming to you for our Friday show, the Dr. Laurie Show. And I have a really special person with me today, and I just know that you're going to love her. This is one of my newer friends, Lauren Raguzin, and Lauren is coming in today from North Carolina. So welcome to the show, Lauren.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Laurie. Really, it's a pleasure.
Well, thank you. And today we're going to talk about, there are things in the world that people don't want to talk about. They don't want to talk about money. They don't want to talk about sex. And they don't want to talk about mental health. But you and I are going to talk about mental health today, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely.
And Lauren, I don't know if you've heard it on the news, but this week in Canada, we're all grieving and mourning the loss of 9 little kids, 25 injured, um, a school mass shooting, the first one we've had in 40 years nearly. And we're just rocked because this is not something that happens often here.
Yeah,
We have strict gun laws too.
yeah.
So, anyway, just a little prayer out to all the families right now who are grieving those little people and just hang in there.
Yes.
Yes. So, mental health, that's our topic today. I've been a little crazy myself now and again. I mean, nobody escapes, right?
Right.
So, over to you because I know we have some things we're going to touch on, but where would you like to start?
Yeah, so let me just introduce myself to everyone. So my name is Lauren Raguzin.
Hmm.
Raguzin, a very odd name, I know. I am the only Lauren Raguzin in the world, okay? If you Google me, if you go on LinkedIn or Facebook, and here's why. My husband was born in Croatia, and in Croatia, the last name is actually pronounced Raguzin. So I met my husband in 2007. We were married in 2009, love of my life. And sadly, my husband had cancer 2 times, and the third time took him. So I am a widow. I lost my husband on June 25th of last year. Um, but yes, so that's my last name. And now about me. So I've been doing communications my whole career. I started in public relations. I was the primary spokesperson at the Hertz Corporation for O.J. Simpson.
Oh,
Yes, my very first corporate job. Yep. So trial by fire.
yeah.
PR is not for everyone. So I did PR for a number of years, and then I pivoted into internal communications, then change communications. And I'm very much about like user experience, transformation, and people. So why I wanted to be interviewed today, Laurie, is because I am a board member for the National Alliance on Mental Illness for Johnston County. And for those of you who don't know who it is, NAMI is a huge nonprofit. They have multiple chapters all across the country. I think they're even in Canada, maybe. And I joined as the Director of Marketing and Communication in October of 2024. And in the primary reason I joined is my best friend died by suicide in 2021, 4 days before starting a brand new job. I was the last person to talk to her. I had no idea that would be the last time I would talk to her. And I was consumed with guilt for 5 years. I'm no longer consumed with guilt because, as part of my role at NAMI, I recently completed a very comprehensive 25-part social media campaign with another board member. And he's just an incredible, Alex, incredible human being. And he tried to die by suicide twice. And the series that we did, it healed me, right? And the reason it healed me is because he very rawly and openly talked about why he did it a second time. And I really understood why my friend did it. Because what I understood by doing that, I interviewed him extensively, is he explained that it's a pain that you can't even understand. And it's a pain that never goes away. And the only thing in your mind that's going to heal it is dying by suicide. So, in this very odd way, becoming a board member of NAMI and meeting Alex and hearing his story and figuring out a way that we could tell this story, it healed me because I now realize there's nothing I could have done to save my friend.
No,
That's me.
that's you. Yes, well, you know my story too. I've had a similar experience. I actually did a solo show last week and just told the story. So, yes, I blamed myself too. I was his wife, it was my husband.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, I didn't see that coming. That was like a railroad train coming right down the track.
Yeah.
Took completely off my rails for about 7 years,
Yeah.
right? Because of the guilt and the stigma attached. That was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's still there. It's there every day. I think about him all the time, dream about him a couple of times a week. Yeah, so I understand that totally.
Yeah. And I think, I really have been giving a lot of thought to this because, there's a lot of mental illness, and the main reason when I reached out to you to be a guest on your show is because, so I'm part of NAMI and all of NAMI's programs are free. We have 3 different support groups and I participate in all of them except one. One is during the day and I can't do that one. But every Thursday we have an in-person support group. And then every Sunday, we have a Zoom, which anyone from around the country can call in. And that's really about families, because there's a lot of families who are struggling with people who may have mental health challenges. And so when I started as a NAMI board member, I didn't know what I was going to do. And I actually started their LinkedIn page. They didn't have one. I'm very big on social media. And yeah, and I also manage their external Facebook page. And then this wonderful peer of mine, her name's Dana, she manages the Facebook page internally for the community. And she just does an amazing job. So one of my goals is to really start partnering with her more because she is very savvy about, all the nuances of mental health. And I think, my primary, if I had 2 messages that I want people to take away today. Number 1 is we have to stop being afraid to talk about mental health and mental illness. And I think sometimes it's just like when people are diagnosed with a horrible disease. People don't know what to say, so they just choose to ignore it. And I think it's the same, when it's heartbreaking to hear what happened in Canada, heartbreaking. But I feel that in the US anyway, it's become so commonplace. And I feel that we're desensitized to it. And the one thing that really bothers me is that I feel that there's labels. You hear a young person doing something, oh, they're mentally ill. Oh, we need better gun control. And this is what I really want to talk to you about because I do feel, I've been thinking about all the people in my life, like my friend who died by suicide, other people who've struggled with addiction, self-medicating. And I think it comes down to 2 things: self-worth, having no self-esteem, and trauma. And I think when trauma is unchecked or unresolved, it seeps into other areas of your life and it escalates and it escalates. And, now I don't know about the true correlation to mental illnesses and self-worth and trauma, but I can tell you I learned this from Alex when he told his story, because he first tried to die by suicide on his 22nd birthday. And then he tried again 5 years later. But when I asked him after the first attempt, I said, why? And he said, Lauren, I was bullied my entire childhood. He said, Lauren, I'm not just talking bullying. And social media wasn't even back then. He's like 34. I used to come home with black eyes. I used to come home with marks around my neck from chokeholds. He said this went on for years. My parents tried to do everything to make it stop. And he said, Lauren, it never stopped. And I'm sorry if I get emotional because it's very sad to me that this poor man, who's an unbelievable human being, was bullied so much that at 22 years old, he wanted to end his life because he felt like a loser. And the second time he tried, he was 27 years old, and he kept hearing, "You're a loser, kill yourself, kill yourself, kill yourself." And what he shared very openly, he said, "Lauren, once I made the decision," he said, "peace just washed over me because I had a plan." And how his life was saved, I'm not going to share it because I really would like people to go and watch the series, because how his life was saved, it is the most miraculous story. I have chills every time I watch the episodes. And he calls himself, he's in remission. And the reason he's in remission is because he did the hard work. He realized that he suffered from depression. And a lot of us, I'm going to share something personal about myself. I was laid off, my first career layoff. Never been laid off in my life. In my entire life, Laurie, I have been defined by my career. My career. That's all that defined me. I had to be the good communications person. If someone critiqued my writing, I would get so upset. I don't anymore, because I'm older and I just want the best product. But when that happened, initially I was okay. And I feel that when people are laid off or restructuring or whatever you want to call it, and it's a huge epidemic in our country right now, it's like a grieving process. Because if you think about it, we spend more time with the people we work with than our own family.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day you get the email, okay, your computer's been shut off and bye-bye, thanks for your work at the company. And then people don't reach out to you because either they're not allowed because the company says no, depending on the person's level, or they just don't know what to say. So I think what happens is people spiral. They go in a deep isolation, and you start having no confidence in yourself. And that was me. Okay. I was in a clinical depression. I didn't know it was a clinical depression for a year. I didn't walk my dog. I didn't go out. I did hardly anything for my husband. It was a miracle he didn't divorce me. And he kept saying, "Honey, you have to snap out of this." And he wanted me to go see a doctor. He wanted me to go on drugs. And I said, "I will not do that." I said, "I've never been depressed before. I will get through this." And I woke up one day and I was fine. Now, I'm a very fortunate person, Laurie, because the reason I was fine is because of God. He flipped a switch in my head, and this is what he told me to do. "Lauren, you need to create an online portfolio." That was the message. That was it. I got up that day. I was like all energized. I'm walking Cinnamon, my dog, and my husband's like, "What's going on? Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." I go, "I see what the problem is." And once I started creating that online portfolio, I was like, I am so freaking talented. Why am I doubting my abilities?
Mm-hmm.
And I have never been depressed again. Now, I think I've never been depressed again because the reason I was in that depression, I didn't feel God in my life for a year. And for me, someone I'm a devout Catholic, I'm a Christian, and I talked to him all the time, I prayed to him all the time, and nothing. And I wrote about it in a book, and the title of my book was "When God Came to My Pity Party." It was the first book I was published in. It's very exciting. And I have like a stockpile of these books in my garage. I just buy them when I run out, because for the last 8 years, I help people find jobs. There were people I reached out to back then, crickets. No one ever got back to me. Those same people came back to me when they were laid off, and they said, "Lauren, will you help me?" And I said, "Absolutely." And my husband would always say to me, "Why do you do that?" I said, "Because that's why God put me on this earth. I have gifts, and when we go through struggles, God doesn't give us the struggles. He gets us through. the struggles. And I feel that it's my calling. And a lot of times when I like talking to strangers, I go on LinkedIn, and if I see a post and that person looks like they're about to be evicted, they've been looking for a job for 2 years, they just seem like they are at the end of their rope, I reach out to them. I don't know them, and I don't have a crystal ball. I don't like that I can get you a job. But what I've noticed when I do that, first of all, I've met amazing people, just amazing, who have been better friends to me than my own friends after my husband passed. That's number one. But number two, half the time we don't even talk about jobs. They talk about how depressed they are, how they feel worthless. And, and that, the biggest thing, if anyone watches this or the replay, what I wish corporations would do, because, when I was first laid off, I was mad. I was hurt. I was like, how could they do this to me? I went through the different stages of grief, but I'm not mad anymore, because you know what? Companies have to do what they have to do. But the one thing I think companies should really think about is, they give you severance, they give you this, they give you that, they pair you with like an outplacement agency to help you get a job. But what about giving someone just some mental health support, just so they can talk to someone? They have it in the company. When you work in a company, they offer all this wellness and all that. Why is it when you leave the company, they don't do that? And I'd be curious to know what you think about that.
Well, it's been my experience that it's not just the person losing the job, it's the people they leave behind.
Yeah.
Because like you said, you spend more time at work than with your family, and they become your family.
Yeah.
So a lot of times after there's been an exit, like you or someone else, the remaining staff, they feel there's guilt because they still have their job.
Yeah.
They miss you for whatever the relationship looked like. And I think there's a safety net that needs to be provided after the fact for everybody. When there's an exit of any kind, it could be that a coworker passes away. What do they do for that? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I just found out the other day, and I'm heartbroken, and I'm just trying to figure out what to do. A former manager of mine just lost his brother.
Cool.
And when I read it on LinkedIn, I cried for like 30 minutes. Because and I think, part of that is, I'm an empath, obviously. But I think it's because, having been through grief, I lost my dad when I was 19. I've had a lot of loss in my life. And I'm just hoping, I keep messaging people on LinkedIn, from that old company, just asking, is he okay? Because, I just can't even imagine what he's going through. And, and I think you're right, Laurie, physical death, you go through a grieving process. I think when people divorce, you go through a grieving process because you had all these hopes and dreams. That was your person. And then you go through a divorce, and it just becomes about money and things, and people just don't act nicely. And I think it's the same when you're laid off or a restructuring. And, decisions have to be made. Let's face it, companies are in business to make money. And I think we all know that. When we take a job, like gone are the days where you stay at a company for 30 years, you get the pension and all of that, and then the recruiters are like, well, why haven't you worked in 2 years? And, well, have you looked at the job market? Well, what happened here? It looks like you're a job hopper.
Yeah, I know.
I'm a consultant for a living, and I've chosen to be a consultant. I've worked full-time in companies, and you know what? The stress of it. One job I took, I was working 90 hours a week. And they didn't care about me. But when I was interviewing for the job, they were like, oh, you could take as much PTO as you want, and
Yeah,
oh,
right.
and
Yeah,
oh,
right.
social impact, and I remember talking to the senior leader, and I go, where is the care for me? Go, what is this culture? And I left that company because I'm like, this is not for me. And so I'm a consultant, and I really like being a consultant because I meet amazing people. I have a very diverse background. I've worked in IT, I've worked in retail, I just worked at healthcare. And because I'm like a learner, I'm like a sponge. I just like to learn new things all the time. And people always think that I'm like Miss IT, and I am the most technologically unsavvy person you'll ever meet. But I teach myself things. I don't know how to do something. I asked ChatGPT, all right, walk me through this. Send me a video because I'm a very visual person. You know, it's much easier for me to watch something and then I can do it as opposed to, reading it. But I do feel that, especially in the United States, there's a very serious unemployment issue. And my heart breaks every time I go on LinkedIn. And, I can only help so many people.
Mhm.
What I ask every morning, I always say this prayer. I always say, God, please bring people in my life who I can help. And please bring people in my life who can help me.
Mhm.
I have to tell you, Laurie, like you and I meeting, like,
Oh, yeah.
like I didn't really know who you were. And then we were on the director call for GSFE. And I've always been meaning to reach out to you. And I know I could have asked you to interview me about anything, but I am very, very passionate about mental health. And I'm more passionate about the stigma because, I post a lot. And, on Facebook, I post a picture of my dog. Oh my God. Videos about my dog, likes, comments. I post things about mental health.
Same
Crickets.
here. Same. I have the same experience.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
I guess because I know you've been in the mental health behavioral like almost your whole career, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think, like if people are listening, what can we do to help break the stigma of this? Like, why is it that no one wants to help solve this problem?
Well, it's not about money because the money's there.
I know.
Certain marginalized communities have access to funds that they could pay for whatever they want to pay for and get help.
Yeah.
Um, and in your situation, there's support and there's no charge, no fee.
Yeah.
Uh, so I mean, it's not because there aren't any resources,
Yeah.
but that phone, to pick up that phone when I'm thinking about taking my life, that phone weighs 500 pounds
Yeah.
to do that 911 call.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, in the world that I work in and the way that I see things, it
Mhm.
all stems back to that self-worth. So when I lack that,
Yeah.
I'm the last person to want to say, "Hey, I'm not well. Um, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
I'm a loser. I'm not normal."
Yeah.
But this is a lot of that is conditioning and programming. I remember walking into my
Yeah.
homeroom in grade 10, high school, and the teacher said to me, "Well, I've just reviewed your junior high records, and with marks like that, you're not going to amount to anything."
Oh
I
my
didn't
God.
do well in school because I wasn't in the box. My mind didn't work that way. So my
Yeah.
marks, I just barely made it past. Now I got to university, I soared. But I was told by a person in a position of authority that I was not going to amount to anything. Now I had two choices: to believe her or not believe her.
Yeah.
And I chose not to believe her. And I ended up becoming a teacher myself.
Yeah.
So, but when you are told things by people in positions of authority, parents, pastors, priests, police officers, there's a part of us that just backs right down and says, well, they must be right.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
you're right.
We buy into an awful lot of lies.
Yeah.
And yeah, no.
There's this
And
other thing I want to ask you about, because you see it everywhere. And I feel that it's this label that people just use, when they see that someone is a certain way. And it's narcissism. And, I've learned a lot about narcissism because I've actually joined groups to understand it. Because when I take hold of, like, some people in my life, I see those tendencies, but I also think it's a label. And I feel that it's a very overused label. It's just like when there's a shooting and it's a young person. Oh, they're mentally ill. How do you know that? How do you know that they didn't suffer some horrific trauma in their life? And like in Canada, for example, an 18-year-old girl, okay? Who knows? Maybe she was like Alex. Maybe she was bullied her entire life. And her 18-year-old brain is like, I need to end this pain. I'm just going to go and kill people. Like, because that's what they want. But I'm just very curious, because what I've learned about narcissism, and it goes to what I just said earlier, it's when it's not a narcissist, and there's varying types of narcissists. I know quite a few of them. And it seems to me that they're nothing more than an adult child who suffered trauma that was never dealt with. And it doesn't mean that they buried it. They knew it, but they almost developed like this persona. Because what I've noticed about, people in my life who absolutely have narcissistic tendencies is that they're all about admiration. They're always about, oh, look how good I am. And they always need to be the center of attention. And when they're not the center of attention, that's when they get mean and they lash out at you. And I know there's a lot of things that come as a result of narcissism, like, borderline personality disorder, and, and sometimes, people who have, let's say, narcissistic parents, they then marry narcissistic people. It's just like my friend who died by suicide. She was in a horribly domestic violent marriage. And I knew that, but I didn't know the extent. But she kept picking the wrong people, in her life. And again, it's what you just said. It goes to self-worth. And then when we feel that we are not good enough, and if someone keeps telling you you're not good enough, or they pull at something that is they know your weakness. Like, that's the thing about narcissism. They know how to prey on people and control them. And what I've learned about narcissism is that they know how to find the people. They're usually very kind, empathetic people. And they know how to push them down because it makes them feel better. And in reality, I think a lot of people who have narcissistic tendencies, they do because that person that they're doing that behavior to, they're jealous of them. They represent everything they'd like to be, but they can't. So I'm just curious, all of your years, I'm sure this is something you've dealt with clients and workshops you teach. What is your feeling on narcissism?
well, I think it's another label that, puts somebody in a box. To me, a narcissist, as I know it and what I've researched on it, and the people that I've worked with, narcissists, I've worked with them and said, you're not a narcissist. You're hurt. You're grieving. You've had trauma. Tell me about some things.
Right.
And a lot of times they have been victims of sexual abuse, particularly our men, because as females, it's not a good thing for us to have been sexually assaulted at any time.
Yeah.
But for our men, and a lot of our men have these narcissistic tendencies. It's like, I should have been able to protect myself and I couldn't.
Right.
And when a young boy is sexually assaulted or raped or sodomized, there's like an extra veil of healing that has to take place in order for them to get through that ceiling.
Yeah.
because the shame that is attached to it, it's like walking around with a suitcase that's got 300 pounds of rocks in it, and you have to take it to the bathroom, and you have to take it to your vehicle, and you
Yeah.
have to take it everywhere. The shame is overwhelming.
Yeah.
Well, I was sexually assaulted when I was 12. I never told anybody till I was 45.
Wow.
Really? So you see, I had some of those behaviors. I
Yeah.
was very controlling.
Yeah.
I was a perfectionist.
Yeah.
They're personality traits. They're not, they're what we do to survive, to,
Right.
and also to those narcissistic tendencies. Big victims here because a victim wants to do everything to make sure they're looked after so they don't
Right.
get abused or used again. And that's
Hmm.
one of the biggest traits of a narcissist, always taking care of self
Right.
out of a fear that I will not be looked after. Well,
Right.
that's because they weren't.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And I think, because let's face it, I don't think there's one person in this world that hasn't had trauma in their life.
Well, it's not realistic.
Right.
There's 8.5 billion people on the
Yeah.
planet right now. And here's a little something to add on to that, if I may.
Yes.
There's 8.5 billion people on the planet, and I will guarantee you everything that I've got that not one person's going to escape trauma.
Yeah.
It's a part of life. But what we need to do is show our children how to come out of it and respond to it and
Yeah.
not make it part of who they are.
Yeah.
Managing trauma. You've heard of anger management?
Yes.
Well, it should be trauma management.
Trauma management. I
Okay,
agree.
there's a new tool we just came up with. You
Yeah.
see? So the problem is we don't carry the incident. So let's say we were sexually assaulted, or our dad beat us up with a belt, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not the incident that we carry forward. It's the emotions that are attached to that incident at the time that we carry forward.
Yeah. I agree.
So mental health to me is uh, not even the right word. I think we should be working, I don't think, I know, we should be supporting people with their emotional wellness.
Yeah.
Okay. Mental health implies there's something wrong with your brain.
Yes. Yes.
There are people who have brain injury,
Yeah.
heavy drug use. I mean, the brain does chemically change,
Right.
but
Right.
it's the emotional wellness that people struggle with because nobody wants to talk about that.
Right.
I didn't tell my parents about the sexual abuse. Why? I was afraid my mom wouldn't believe me, perhaps.
Mm.
And if my dad knew who it was, he'd go get his rifle and go shoot him and go to jail. And I didn't want my dad to go to jail.
Right. Right.
Because we took on a lot. And
Yeah.
I work with teenagers a lot. And the parents will say, I don't understand why he didn't come to me. Well, you know why he didn't come to you? Because you're totally stressed out all the time over nothing, what seems to be nothing. So why would that kid bring a problem to you? Because they don't want to stress out their parents any more than they're already stressed.
Right. Right.
So it cuts off the communication.
And I have to tell you something else I learned when I was doing the interviews with Alex. And this was fascinating to me because one of the things, whenever they ask us, we go and speak. So there's a program called CIT, and it's basically talking to law enforcement and, correctional, etc. And so Alex had two, and he details it in this series. He had two very different experiences. So the first time he tried to die by suicide, it was his 22nd birthday. He was out celebrating with his friends. He came home and he just took a knife and he just started cutting himself. And, he was lucky his roommate walked in,
Mm-hmm.
called 911 right away. They stormed the apartment. Here he is in a pool of blood. Okay. They handcuffed him. They treated him like a criminal.
Oh, yeah.
And then, this was even more frightening. And then, he's brought to the facility, the hospital. not only did they release him that night, because he talked his way out of it, they served him dinner and they gave him a knife. When he shared that, I was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Now,
somebody's not paying attention.
flash forward 5 years, very different experience. But that was, and what he did, and I think sometimes this happens too with people. It's like he threw himself into martial arts, and he was doing it 4 or 5 days a week, and that really helped him. But when I was interviewing him, I asked him, and I said, okay, you were doing martial arts, so why did you try again? And he said, because Lauren, it was just a Band-Aid. I never dealt that I was depressed because you just don't talk about it. You tell someone you're depressed, and come on, let's go out, let's get you a drink. And but now what happened this time was he had a gun. And again, I'm not going to tell you how his life was saved.
No, it's not ours to tell. That's his story.
Well, it's detailed in this video, and it is miraculous how his life was saved. But anyway, totally different. It was a woman, and he let them know that he was disengaging the gun, so they knew that it was safe. And she walked in and she hugged him.
Mm-hmm.
She said, Alex, I'm here to help you. It's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And I know it's kind of a fine line, because if you think about what law enforcement goes through, you see what's going on in our world. I don't know why anyone would be a police officer. I think it's the same as, while people are priests or whatever vocation you're in, because you have a calling. But, you have to be so careful, and make sure that, they're not going to turn the gun on you.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, it was such a different outcome. And I think that's what changed it for him, because then he realized, okay, I have to get a hold of this. Mm-hmm. And, that was when he was 27. He's now 34, living a great life. Just got married about a year ago. And I'd really like to introduce you to him, because I think he'd be a really great guest for your show, because in this series I did with him, he's just such an eloquent speaker. It was the easiest thing I've ever done with anyone. I've been interviewing people for a long time and trying to figure out how to tell the story. And with Alex, he was just a dream come true, because anything I asked him, he'd always repeat the question, and he'd always process it very carefully. And then he would share, families listening. And the very last episode we did, I asked him, is there anything else you want to say? And he said, yeah, anyone who's watching this, please reach out to me. And he really means it. It's why he's a board member. He wants to really get out there. He wants to go to schools. He wants to go to corporations. I mean, NAMI, we would do that. Let's say there was a local corporation or company in Johnston County, because the way NAMI is structured, there's NAMI Wake, there's, every county has their own. So I live in Johnston County. I live in a very nice town called Clayton. I love it. And we're part of Johnston County. But let's say there was a major company here, and they wanted, us to develop a program, focused on wellness and mental health. We'll do that with them. We'll train people. We'll give them handouts, and we have all the resources, and it's all free. And and again, companies talk about, oh, we believe in health and wellness, but what exactly is that? Does mental health factor into that? I don't know. Mm-hmm. It should, but again, it's a stigma. We just choose not to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're talking about it today, because it's critical. The other thing is the self-worth component, because my product line is called Self-Worth ... the missing link. Mm-hmm. Because most programs, products, services do not have a self-worth component that's substantial. They might mention you should love yourself, or you need to have self-esteem, and that's about the extent of it. Yeah. So that's what inspired me to create hard copy products
Right.
that back that up. And I think I mentioned to you when we were talking privately that when I started developing the workshops in 1997, I
Mhm.
couldn't find a book. I could not find a paper that had ever been published. And even to this day, people who are in the mental health care industry do
Mhm.
not get any training around the concept of self worth.
Yeah.
That's the reason for me to put some things in this kind of a format so that it's a resource manual, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
people can go in and do their own work on themselves and be your own best therapist, and you don't have to drive there and face somebody you don't
Yeah.
trust.
Yeah.
There's lots around it. So they don't get that in their training, even a psychologist or a therapist, because they have become my clients because they want to learn about it.
Yeah. I'll tell you one more story, and this happened very early in my career. So my very first job, um, I had just started as a secretary. Couldn't get a job in PR. I majored in marketing. And it was like a light bulb, like when I went to Pace University, and I started as a marketing major, and then I had this course because you have to take electives, for your major. And it was the principles of public relations.
Oh,
And
cool.
this instructor was just amazing. And she was an adjunct. Her name was Professor McElroy. I wish I could find her. I have gone to everyone in Pace to find this woman. Don't know where she is. But it was really interesting because she kept staring at me throughout the whole class. And, I'm like, why is she staring at me? So I went up to her after class and I said, I have to ask you, you kept staring at me. I really was paying attention. She goes, Lauren, I'm so sorry. You look just like my best friend, but a younger version. And I said, oh, okay, that explains it. And I said to her, I said, I now know what I want to do because of you. Like, this is what I want to do. And then Pace was wonderful. Great school. Anyone watching this, fantastic school. I then was an adjunct there. Um, Even before I got my master's, they said, Lauren, what do you want to teach? And what was interesting is they got me this internship. It was a nuclear power plant. Okay. And my job was going to be going around with all the public information officers and teaching the community not to be afraid of nuclear energy. So I had to go through so much testing for this job, like psychological analysis, because it's a nuclear power plant. I'm like 19 years old. They have to make sure I'm not crazy. I get it. And my first day, they had a leak, very minor. It was like the equivalent of like the radiation you would get, let's say, if you're having like an x-ray for your teeth. So I walk in, I'm 19, and they said, Lauren, we've had a leak. We have to go to a press conference. Here's the statement. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? They said, Lauren, anyone calls, you just read the statement. I go, but what if the media calls? Lauren, just read the statement. And it was so funny because one of the people who called was the chairman at Pace of the entire communications department. And I recognized his name. He didn't know me. And I spent like 15 minutes on the phone with him, just, I didn't rely on the statement because, he was engaging with me and, I wasn't saying anything I don't think I shouldn't have been saying. But okay, so then tried to get a job in PR. No, didn't have a journalism background. No one would look at me. So I take this job as a secretary because I type 100 words a minute. Like when I was in high school, I used to get an A. Like I type really fast. I didn't have to look at the keyboard, nothing. So I get this job, and then it was probably like 6 months after I'm like promoted to AE, and I hated it. It's all number crunching. But I was working for this man. He's now deceased, and he used to call me Lors, and it really bothered me. My name is Lauren. Okay, he was a male chauvinist pig, and he used to make me go out to lunch with him. I'm not exaggerating, like 3 or 4 times a week, because I reported to him. Okay, and he was a big shot. And he said, Lors, I think you should just get your MRS degree and call it a day. And I said, MRS degree? What does that mean? You just need to get married and be barefoot and pregnant. you're never going to amount to anything. Yep.
There's another bite at your self-worth, another chomp gone.
Yeah. But there's a very nice ending to the story. So I had heard, and I'm going to see her. I haven't seen her in 20 years. There was a woman, who had been at the agency, and I heard that she was starting a corporate communications department. And I just, at 22, I knocked on her door. I didn't know her. And I had heard that she had just had a baby. And I just said, oh, my maiden name's Garvey. I said, oh, I'm Lauren Garvey. I work for so-and-so. And, I'm really interested in the department you're going to start. And then she said, oh, okay. And I got the feeling she was going to like slough me off. And I said, oh, I heard you just had a baby. Can I see pictures? And with that, she invited me into her office. We sat down on the couch. And I got the job 3 weeks later.
Wow.
And I always say, and I know that she gets very embarrassed. Her name is Pamela Moffat. She always gets embarrassed when I tell this story because she always says, Lauren, but you did it all. But it's why I help people, Laurie. It's why I like to help people who are in school. Because right now it's very hard to get a job, and they're going to leave school and have like $200,000 in loans. It's like insanity. And like I always say to her, I don't know where I'd be if it wasn't for you. Because not only did she give me the chance, she like taught me and helped me with my self-esteem. Because the person I reported to, horrible. Imagine someone saying that to you at 22 years old.
Yeah.
And she, like, I was very starstruck. And I just commented today, like, I was very starstruck. I worked in New York City. And, if we saw I used to just go to the Plaza Hotel, hoping I'd run into a celebrity. And then one day we're walking and we had just turned the corner and it was Jack Klugman. And she just looked and said, good morning, Mr. Klugman. And then, he turned the corner. I'm like, oh my God, that was Quincy. Oh my God, that was Quincy. She goes, I have got to fix you of this. You will not come to events with me if you act like this. Celebrities are nothing more than people. And she taught me very well because I have dealt with so many celebrities in my career. And there's only one that I took a picture with because she always said, Lauren, you're the PR person. You don't ask to take pictures with them. The guests, the customers, they're the ones that get the pictures. And the picture I have, it was with Brad Garrett, the guy from Everybody Loves Raymond. He did this event. It's when I was working at Office Depot. Photographers taking pictures, and he comes over and he goes, I want a picture with her. And it's the only picture I have. And it's on my refrigerator. It was like, I worked with so many celebrities, and
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Working with celebrities, that's a dream I have. But can you imagine being under the microscope from the public eye?
No.
And how much you'd suffer on your own because you're not able to reveal the true you.
I know.
Right? Lots of stuff there. There's a whole new market there because
Robin Williams, devastated. Matthew Perry, devastated.
Oh, right?
Yeah.
No self-worth.
Yeah. My husband would always say to me, and I think he's right. My husband was a very, very smart man. Never went to college, but he was brilliant. We'd watch Jeopardy at night. I would always get the sitcom answers. I'd always get anything to do with writing, English, spelling. I would get all those. John would know answers. I was like, how do you know this? I don't know. It just comes in my head. But he was a very avid reader. He would get the final Jeopardy question almost every single time.
Oh,
I
wow.
think I've gotten it 4 times in my life watching it. And I'd always ask him, like, honey, you should, let's get you on the show. I can retire. We can move
Right.
around.
So let me ask you this. We have
Yeah.
about 3 or 4 minutes left.
Sure.
And I guess I would just ask you, what are some final things you'd like to share around mental health and what needs to happen next? You know, what needs to happen so that people wake up?
Yeah.
In Canada, the stats are 1 out of 4 people in Canada would be diagnosed as mentally ill. 1 in 4. And we all know COVID did a number. If you
Oh,
weren't mentally ill before COVID, you were definitely when you came out the other side.
yes.
So what would be some words of encouragement from you, your organization,
So the
that you would
biggest
share?
thing I would say, anyone watching this show, doesn't matter where you live, reach out to me. I will talk to my president. I will get you engaged with, that chapter, because NAMI has chapters like all over the country. And I think globally, I'm almost sure they're in Canada.
Yes,
Um,
we got a note from someone who's watching. Here we go.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And what I would say, I always encourage people as I mentor these people. I mean, there's a stigma to mental health in general, and then there's a stigma where no one wants to get help because they don't want to be labeled, that they're depressed or whatever condition they may be suffering from. But I would say, anyone watching this in the replay, I would urge companies, corporate America, just reach out to me. I'll get you connected. We can help you. And my closing comment, and I think I'm going to write a post about this. It probably won't go anywhere. But I'd really like companies to start thinking about when they're going to do a layoff or a restructuring, that they do incorporate one of those benefits, linking them to, some type of, service or workshop, like a workshop like yours, or a therapist, or, anyone that they could just talk to, because I think that especially when you're laid off, that causes depression. That causes, self-worth issues. You don't think that you can do anything anymore, and you
Mhm.
really start doubting yourself. And I think all it takes is for someone to lift them up and to just bring light into their life where they may just feel darkness.
Mhm. Great. I see our friend here. There are more than 600 NAMI affiliates in the United States, and many of their programs are available virtually.
That's Rich, my president. Hi,
Oh,
Rich.
terrific. Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Virginia, yes, great. Okay, beautiful.
This is
Well,
wonderful.
I'd like to thank you very much, Lauren,
Of
for being on
course,
the
of
show
course.
today. And
Yeah.
we are always open to discuss mental health.
Okay.
Emotional wellness is my preferential wording, but
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about, and I don't have a problem talking about it.
I'm
It's
going to
an
get you connected with Alex because
yeah, it's an epidemic right now.
it
Okay,
is. It is. It truly
and we
is.
need to take care of things.
Yes,
So
we
let's
do.
wish everybody a beautiful Valentine's Day.
Yes.
Monday here in Canada is a holiday. Doesn't matter. I'll be seeing you anyway, but it's Family Day, and
Oh,
nobody goes to work, and they spend time with their family. It's like a long weekend.
nice. That's
So it's a
nice.
double whammy this year because it's Valentine's and then a
Yeah.
Sunday, and then Monday is Family Day. So thank you everyone for joining us and for listening. And Lauren, it's been a pleasure
Yes.
again.
Yes.
I don't think we'll ever stop being able to talk. All right.
Right. Thank you. Have a
Okay.
great
So
day,
bye.
everyone.
You
Bye
bet.
bye.